Hey y'all,
What's going on, guys?
I'm Jay,
And I'm Chris, the bird nerd.
and we
We
are
are the
the
bird
Bird
brains.
Brains. See that
Roast.
one sounded good. Oh, I forgot my mug. I don't have tea tonight. I
Um,
might. This
I got some ice
podcast
cold
might be a
water.
waste. This podcast might be a waste.
You
My
blew
voice
it,
could go
man.
out at any moment.
You're good. That's all right.
I see a new. Is that a new hat?
Yeah, I don't know if you
There
guys
you
can
go.
see that some of the
Yeah,
bird brains merch. Telling you
there you
guys,
go.
hook it up. We've had a few sales these last couple weeks, so
I haven't
you
heard
guys,
from Charles Cole yet. Charles,
yeah.
if you're watching this one, you need to reach out. We owe you some merch.
Yeah.
But
And I've got some extra merch here, so maybe if we do the same thing, maybe at the end of the podcast on this one, Jay, let's see what we want to do. I don't know, I've got like a shirt, I got another hat, I've got like a backpack that's got the logo on it, so I've got a few
mm.
different options. So
All right. So yeah, share the podcast, comment, like and subscribe, and in your comment tell us you did it.
yeah,
And I'll check. I will
yeah,
check.
let's get the
And
word out.
we'll see what we can do. And I like also adding you don't have to, but if you got a suggestion or a question, throw it in there.
Yeah,
Yeah, a little behind the scenes, Chris and I'll text and say, hey, what are we going to talk about? And I have a little list I've made and all the topics we've covered and all the topics we haven't covered yet. So we'll put it on the list and we'll get to it as we're able.
yeah,
Today, speaking of topics, we have a mashup episode.
yeah. It's gonna be great.
Um, and so today we're going to talk about diamond doves and button quail. And you may be thinking, guys, what the heck? Those are very different species. And you'd be right. You'd be right. They are,
Yeah.
in fact, different.
But there's some pretty good positives to both of these birds in a mixed aviary and other settings that other species of birds just don't give to you. So that's why we wanted to focus on them and kind of do the good with the bad on some of them, but mostly the good, and kind of bringing them up to putting them out in the light for everyone else. I know sometimes these aren't as popular as your Gouldian finches and canaries and whatnot, but these are really good assets and additions to mixed aviaries or individual cages, things like that. So
Yeah, and they have a lot in common. So, like, we can start with, as a general rule, and I'm going to always put in the caveat, it's always bird by bird. You could have 100 of this species that are perfect, and then you could have 101 is a big problem bird. So,
yeah,
if you have bird 101, I'm sorry. But as a general rule, they do well in a
right,
mixed aviary with finches, even small waxbills.
yeah,
And, if you've seen videos like on my Instagram of diamond doves, they look a lot bigger than a finch, but they're still really pretty small. I mean, their actual body is smaller than a tennis ball.
yeah,
If even that, maybe a, a not, I wouldn't say a teenager even, but like a preteen fist, so
yeah.
much smaller than my fist.
I was gonna say maybe like body would, and you own them, Jay, and I'm waiting to
hmm
once my weather warms up to for you to
I
send me a
checked
few of
today.
these incredible birds. Yeah, still raining and snowing today, but
I check every day.
yeah, I know it's nuts. But I would probably say like the same body type as or size as a canary. They just have a longer tail than a canary, right? So a
Yeah,
little bit
maybe,
longer
well,
overall, but maybe body size similar-ish
depends
to
how
canary.
beefy your canary is. They also have a longer neck, smaller
Yeah,
head for sure. Yeah, and they probably weigh a little bit more. They
right.
are a little bit more muscular, and they fly a lot differently, right? So they're not a they're not a finch, right? They're not in the finch family. So one of the big characteristics of a finch is interrupted flight. So like if, for instance, if you watch a duck fly or a dove, every the whole time they're flying, they're beating their wings. They don't ever coast, they don't ever take thing off. The only time they'll coast is if they're about to land.
Yeah.
Whereas finches, you'll see flap, flap, break, flap, flap, break. And it's called interrupted flight. So they have constant flight, but they're surprisingly agile. I mean, I have to catch them every now and again, and they fly fast. And I mean, they're not as agile as some of the finches. I mean, I have some finches, I'm trying to get them in the net, and they'll be in the net, and then they'll be able to turn around and fly back out of
Yeah.
the net. I'm like, come on.
Yep. Yep.
But they are, you can't catch them with your hand.
Yeah.
Yeah, what you can do with the button quail if you
Maybe
get
if you
them
got some
cornered.
ninja skills, lightning fast, but
Yeah, yeah, or if you snuck up on them, maybe. But yeah. So I guess we'll start there. So diamond doves, right, are an Australian species. Um, so smaller than our doves, but still a dove. So you're getting the long neck. They kind of look like a pigeon if a pigeon got on a really good diet
yeah.
and wasn't so big and husky, but roughly in that same family, and or not roughly in that same family. And so a long kind of tail feather shaft, long neck, and then a pretty small head. Um, would not call them an intelligent bird by any means. I watched it happen to me today actually, but I have several videos of my doves just trying to fly through a glass window pane for like half an hour, like the same spot. And every once in a while, I have to just go in there and kind of like turn them around and be like, just go that way. Um, but
kind
they
of like hey
are,
hey, kind of like hey hey off
yeah,
of Moana. You gotta
that's
show them where the
exactly,
food is.
that is exactly, yeah. I mean, they're bird brains, right? Um, as my mom likes to say about a dumb bird, right? So they're not all as smart as some of our birds. But they are great parents, and they do tend to be really gentle, right? That's the symbol of peace, like even in the Bible, right? So you have the
Yeah,
dove. They tend to be, they live up to that. Whereas button quail, no,
yeah,
they're the only reason button quail are not the most dangerous animal on earth is because they're also tiny.
yeah.
Um,
But
I
they can do some damage if you have some of those 101 birds, right? Some of the exceptions, you can get a few aggressive males that you get a new fledgling finch that comes down on the ground, and I've had button quail attack them, unfortunately, and to the
yeah,
point
like
where they
kicked
don't live.
babies, quick
Yeah,
kicked
things
babies
like
too.
that.
They'll eat them.
Yeah, yeah, and button quails they're insect eaters, right? So I think it's just part of their natural instinct. I don't think overall they're aggressive birds, but they see something small and it's wiggling around and they think food, right? And so they're really trying to eat it for the most part. But yeah, there's a few maybe precautions there with the button quail.
Yeah, I have a bunch of videos. Every time I find an earthworm, I'll go in my yard. I'll go and throw it in, and you can. I mean, like, I guess what I'm getting to is, it's a relatively recent development for human scientists to realize that dinosaurs evolved into birds. And I really don't understand why it took so long because if you watch like Jurassic Park and then you go watch My Button Quail, if the scale was different, it's the same movie, you
Right?
know?
100%.
Yeah, it's like if My Button Quail were the size of a small horse, they would be terrifying creatures.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and I mean, yeah, they'll take a poke at anything that's small-ish and wiggles by them. Like I had a lizard maybe 2 seasons ago that would hang around the aviary, and it must have gone into the aviary one day because I saw it on the one day on the side of the aviary with like a big hole through its back that
Oh
was like
wow.
exactly the same size as a button quail beak, and you could like see its lungs through the ribs. It was like a
Oh
bad
goodness.
injury, and I was like, "Oh, that lizard's gonna die." And then it healed. It's still around. I can tell which one it is because it's the one with a huge scar on its back. But they'll
That's
they'll take a
crazy.
poke.
That's
Um,
crazy.
so some of the other things they have in common, they eat. They're a great cleanup bird. So both of these birds, so they'll eat. And doves and button quail can eat a wider variety of things than finches and still be healthy. So like they can eat game bird starter. And in fact, young button quail, that's a good thing to feed them, like just hatched button quail. But they'll eat finch food and so finch seed
Yeah.
and egg food and all that. So if you have a big aviary, especially a dirt floor one, and you want to keep it clean, button quail are really, that's what I use them for basically.
Yeah.
Think of it as an aquarium. They're my bottom feeder.
Yep. Yep. They're
Yeah.
they're the cleanup crew of the aviary, right? So they'll eat any seed that's spilled. I mean, anything that they can swallow for the most part, they'll eat. Um, Aviaries many times attract, like ants and things like that. They're one of the few birds that will actually eat the ants.
Hmm.
Spiders, things like that. They really are a great cleanup crew, and are not picky eaters at all. Granted, if you have them, try and feed them a well balanced diet. Your females, they're prolific egg layers, right? I mean, they're laying one, sometimes two eggs a day for
Yeah.
extended periods of time. So
Years. Yeah,
yeah,
years.
it's important to have, a high protein and calcium diet, especially for the females to keep them healthy. And, I will usually go and buy some insects, either mealworms or crickets or things like that, and I'll feed my button quail just to vary their diet. But yeah, that's an important piece. But they really are not picky eaters. They're a great cleanup crew. Now, their poop kind of maybe balances that out. They've got some pretty big poops and stinky poop,
And
especially
so
if
do the doves.
especially if you feed them like live food a lot. But so that the pros and cons maybe balance or cancel each other out. But if you've got a lot of birds, I really enjoy them in an aviary setting. They're a lot of fun and just fun to watch it. And they'll tame down pretty well. I mean, I go in there to feed my birds and they're hopping on my feet, pecking at my shoes,
Well, and they're
they,
really curious. Like mine, if
yeah,
I leave my
uh-huh.
aviary door open, they'll try to come into
Oh,
the shed.
yep.
Yeah.
Mine wait at the door. And I have mine inside my shed, right? So I don't worry about them escaping all the way out. But I'll open up the doors to my aviaries. Yeah, they're the first ones. They just run out, and then they're exploring that
They
space,
just want to
and
see
then
what's out
and then
there.
I just kind of shuffle with my hands, and they run back in the aviary. It's kind of like their recess break that they get to explore a new area. It's pretty funny.
Yeah, and they do some other cool behaviors. So like actually I'm going to post a video of this probably before this podcast comes out, but they take dust baths,
Yes.
which is really cool to see. So they'll kind of dig into the dirt and then kind of shuffle and throw the dirt over themselves. So it's like a little mini dust bath.
Hmm.
And then they sleep together at night. They usually put all their butts together and
Yep.
kind of sleep in like a defensive circle. So that's cool to see.
A little cubby.
Um, yeah. And then uh, they, yeah, they're prolific egg layers and prolific maters also.
Yeah.
So the males, which do you keep more than one male together with females?
No, I do a trio, so I do two females to one male, and he usually has a favorite female, but that the other female, I think takes enough attention off of his favorite female, and you'll notice that they're a little bit, they're not so much aggressive, they're just relentless. I mean, they're always wanting to breed, so you'll find eventually those favorite females, they'll get a bald spot on the back of their head with
Yeah.
the males just trying to, breed them every day. And so I do try to keep, yeah, at least a 2-to-1 ratio, sometimes a 3-to-1 ratios, depending on the male, of females to males. And that helps kind of spread the love around, and it helps kind of protect the females a little bit and distract the male so he's not just constantly focused on one. But yeah, that's what I do with the
Yeah, and
quail.
so I have two males, and the number of females is varied. I think I have six right now, so I think I have eight quail total. So I'm still keeping that same ratio, but I've managed to find two males, and I had another male, and I had to get rid of him because of what you were talking about. He was just too aggressive, which we've talked about my policy before. It's either get
Yeah.
along or get along, right? So
Yep.
found somebody else for him, but um, the two males I have, for whatever reason, I mean, they'll chase each other a little bit every once in a while, but they each have six females to chase around, and they seem to, and I see them, they'll hang out together. So,
Yeah.
and I don't know if it's just because I kind of force them to get along and they're exactly the same size,
Yeah.
but I also, as a result of that, I don't breed chicks successfully very well in the aviary because there's too many birds
Yeah.
interfering. If you want to breed button quail, either I think the best way is right. Well, you talk about it. You're better at button quail breeding than I am. You've done it a bunch
Yeah.
more than I have.
Yeah, I've had quite a few hens successfully hatch out eggs. Usually, what I'll do, if I let them sit. So many times, I have my little trio, and the females will naturally kind of gather their eggs into a corner, and many times I'll kind of like corner off. I'll get like a piece of cardboard or something and put it along the corner so they kind of have like a little covey to go in, and they'll lay their eggs. Once I see a female starting to sit, pretty consistently, I'll remove the other male and female, and then that female just focuses on sitting a lot more, and usually have a pretty successful hatch out rate. Many times I see that the females want to sit, but either the male bugs them too much, and then they eventually just give up and stop incubating the eggs, or the other females try to take over the nest, and usually have two females sitting on the nest, and then they can't make up their mind, and they keep moving the eggs back and forth. They don't get incubated, as consistently as they should, and sometimes you'll get an egg or two to hatch out, but most of the time they give up before it's time to hatch out. Also,
I
I have,
posted that this week, by the
I
way,
did,
of
I saw that video.
two hens sharing. It's
Yeah,
like, hey, hold on.
yeah, and I have seen too in the past, when chicks do hatch out, more times than not, there's exceptions to this. People have had successful, hens with chicks with other button quail, but more times than not, the other quail will kill the chicks actually.
Hmm.
And so that's another reason why I remove all of the other adults if I really want them to try and hatch the eggs out. Then that way, when they hatch, because the first day it seems to take the chicks several hours to really recognize the mom and her call, and they tend to wander off. And that's when the other quail get to them, and they usually don't make it back to the mom. She'll try and guard them and protect them if they're right there next to her. But if they wander off too far, they're kind of just out of luck, unfortunately, um,
Hmm.
until they've really learned to hear their mom and understand her calls and whatnot. And so that's another precaution, or angle that I try to take to successfully breed button quail.
Yeah, and I'm not, I mean, neither of these birds is particularly expensive, but especially button quail are very inexpensive,
Yeah.
which is sometimes I think a negative for any bird to be not expensive. But um, so yeah, I don't really, I let my birds lay and I'll let them sit. I'm letting obviously those hens try to figure it out right now. I've had one hen in the past that I really, and I posted it a couple years ago. I really thought she was going to do it, and I did exactly what you're talking about. I separated her, I walled it off, and just nothing hatched. But
Yeah.
um, I think a lot of people, and I know you've done this too recently, a lot of people just incubator hatch them. And I know like a lot of places where I get mine, that's all they're doing. And as a result, I think they've bred out because I think a button quail can go from hatch to laying in what, 6 weeks? I
Yeah.
think it is. It's really
Yeah.
fast.
Super
So you're
quick.
talking about thousands of generations. And I think a lot of them have just lost
Yeah.
the
They've
finer
some.
points of the instinct.
Yep. I was gonna say they've lost that instinct. We've pulled their eggs so much, and incubated them. And I actually just posted some videos this last couple months of some quail eggs that I had incubated and hatched out and whatnot. And I haven't. So last year I did. One of my females did incubate and hatch out the chicks, but I had the days wrong, and they hatched out when I was gone, and the
Hmm.
other quail got to them. She hatched like five chicks out, and unfortunately none of them survived. But I haven't lately. I've just been pulling the eggs and not letting them sit on them. But yeah, it's the one thing is the reason why they're called button quail, right? Or king quail. King quail is really their name. They come from China, Asia area, like a mountain bird, but they're really
Yeah.
small. I mean, these guys are teeny tiny. So I had one time. So my dad had button quail when we were growing up in our bird shed, and one year we had the gray button quail, which I actually really like the gray button quail. I think
I've
they're
got
pretty
some
cool.
grays. Yeah.
Yeah, I saw your one hen was sitting on it, the one of the two.
Yeah.
Um, we one year she sat on the eggs and she hatched out the chicks, and I was probably like 10 years old, and I went out that morning. It was in the summertime, and I could hear like chicks, and I'm like, man, what is that noise? And so I went out there, and they were so small they fit through that 1/4 inch square wire. And I think back then the button quill were naturally a little smaller, whereas now they're a little bit bigger than
And I've seen a pretty
what they were
wide
before.
range. Yeah.
Right. And but their chicks fit through the wire. We found 8 chicks running through our lawn in our backyard because they had all fit through the wire, and you could just hear them. You'd like gather them all, and then you just sit out in the backyard and we'd listen, because they're trying to call for their mom. And they were all black chicks, and they were super cute. So we ended up catching them all. And that one was the exception. We actually kept the male with the female, and he did really good, and he helped her raise them. But you just kind of got to pay close attention, especially within that first hour. If you see any aggression towards, with the adults towards these chicks, that I would just say, just remove them and just let mom take care of them. And they do a good job. It's really fun. I actually love watching them, and when they get older, she makes that little call and they all run to her. And it's really fun to watch. She shows them how to eat and what to eat. And it's really cool and fascinating to watch. And my kids love it when they get that chance to see them with the chicks.
Yeah, and if you haven't caught on by now, so birds in general have two reproductive strategies when it comes to chicks. Hatching, you have what's called altricial or precocial chicks. So finches and doves and most of the birds, all the hookbills, they're all what's called altricial chicks, which means they're born essentially featherless. They might have a little bit of down, but they basically are born what's called born naked, and they're helpless. So the parents have to feed them. They sit in the nest. That's typically what a lot of people think of when they think of baby birds just hatched. You'll see that in most of the wild songbirds and all that, or all the wild songbirds too. Now, when you get into more ducks and poultry, so your quail, your chickens, ducks, birds like that, in the new world, you'll get, ostriches, emus, things like that. The chicks are what's called precocial, which means they're born essentially mini adults. So within a few hours, they can walk, they can eat, they can make noise. I mean, don't get me wrong, they're absolutely still reliant on mom typically,
Yeah.
but they're a little bit more capable. So they come out of the egg kind of more fully cooked. They have down on, they're able to move around, they're able to huddle together.
Yeah.
So just a whole different experience than tiny little baby finches.
Yeah, and if you see my recent videos that I posted on these button quails that I hatch out, it's like after 24 hours, their egg yolk sac, is absorbed, and I put them in a tote. I put the food and water down there, and I'll kind of poke at it with my finger, and it shows them where it's at, and then you're done. I mean, they know where the food's at, and they know where the water's at, and the heat, and it's really just providing the food and water and keeping the cage clean, and they take care of themselves, so they learn quickly and have that ability, just hours after hatching.
Right. So doves, altricial, so they have helpless babies, but they also have incredible fecundity, right? So their reproduction is rapid. So, and it's kind of interesting to me. So, you think of a finch and they have five, six, seven, eight sometimes babies at a time, but they might in a breeding season only have two or three clutches, whereas your doves, they're going to have one or two chicks at a time, but they're having that at least sometimes every 3 weeks, at least every month. So in a normal breeding season, I'm trying to get three clutches out of a pair of finches. I might get six or seven clutches out of a pair of doves. And
Wow.
you want to talk about rapid, I can't remember the exact number, but they go from hatched to fledging in 2 weeks. So to give you an idea, finches are 3 weeks. They're typically weaned in another week, and then they are sexually mature in like 3 months. So,
Wow.
not unusual for a bird born in early spring to have a clutch in the summer.
So, Jay, do
Um,
the doves usually just lay 2 eggs, or do they lay more than 2 eggs and just usually a couple chicks hatch?
Never more than two. And you either, if they have two fertile eggs, every once in a while, both of mine, this first clutch, I have one that just fledged and I have another one that's sitting. I have two pairs. And um, for whatever reason, I guess actually one of them did lay two eggs and one died in the egg. Usually it's two, it's almost always two, but for whatever reason, both my one hen, and she may just be getting older. I guess she's probably close to 4 years old now. She only laid one this go around, but it's fertile. She's sitting it. It's going to come out.
Nice.
Their fledge rate is like 100%. Like if you have a egg hatch, that baby's getting to the perch like every time. They never miss. They're really good parents, and I think it's because it's the babies are much larger when they come out, and I think especially because you have two, they can keep each other warm kind of. They just seem to be. I've had one baby dove struggle ever, which I chronicled that, and I had to supplement hand feed it. I mean, I was bringing it inside, warming it up, hand feeding it, and it was my inside pair, and it was their first clutch. They had one that didn't do well, and I think it was just inexperience. But that bird lived, which like a
Wow.
baby finch that the parents aren't taking full care of, like tough odds. But the doves, they are really reliable breeders. They've got to be the most reliable breeders I've ever seen.
Now,
Um,
do doves, and I'm asking you the questions because you've
mhm.
got better experience with the doves, and
Yeah, I've been
you're
keeping
sending
them as
me
long as I've been keeping finches. Yeah.
you're sending me my first pair ever. Like I've never had doves or pigeons in my
Oh,
life, and
really? I didn't know you'd
never,
never had them. Okay.
never. Do your doves build their nests? I mean, are they good nest builders, or are they, do they nest in
No.
like a canary
Yeah,
pan?
that's exactly what I use as a canary nest. They are horribly, horribly bad nest builders. In fact, there is a whole Reddit thread called "Dumb Dove Nests" or something like that. Stupid dove nests. Um, I'll have to send you a picture. I'll make an Instagram post about it here shortly. So yeah, I give them just a canary bowl, and I put out a couple, but that's all my doves are coming out of those. But usually you'll look in and you'll see like three pieces of burlap or like one piece of grass, and then like one stick, like one little twig, and that's it. So it's like without help, the baby birds would just basically be like just sitting on wherever they were laid. So
Gotcha.
I think if you just gave them like a flat piece of wood, they would just lay on that piece of wood and hope the eggs didn't roll off. Like I saw one online the other day where some doves in a city somewhere, like mourning doves, that someone had left. They had like a little garden on their fire escape, and they left a glove out, and they looked back out, and there's a mourning dove had laid an egg on the glove. Like they're like so bad at nest building that it's hilarious, especially
Wow.
compared to all our other birds. But yeah, I if I was just breeding doves in a cage, I wouldn't even give them nesting material. I would just give them a canary nest, and they'll let it happen. They also don't keep the nest clean at all. There's no nest hygiene, so by the end, there's usually kind of like a layer of like dove poo, and I just
Hmm.
toss it and give them another one. Um, but they do so they do some really cool things that you haven't I guess I haven't told you about yet. So first of all, they coo just like the wild doves where we live. So you hear hoo 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 hoo, and then the male does a really cool mating display. So he'll sort of follow the female around, um, like maybe like a kid begging for your attention, like, excuse me, hello, hello. They'll interrupt, the female's trying to eat, and the male's like, he's not like trying to jump on her like a finch does, but he's just kind of following her around
He
like an
wants some eye
annoying,
contact. He wants some
yeah,
attention.
yeah. And then he'll bow to her like a very pronounced head down bow, and he puts his tail up like a fan. And I've
Okay,
got
yeah,
video of it if you scroll back through, and then he'll do that coo song and bow and flex his tail. And it reminds me of like it's like a royal thing. It's like, milady.
that's awesome.
And then they have a really strong pair bond. They mate for life. They have a really
Nice.
strong, so they'll sit together, and then like I saw this today. The babies, when they fledge, the babies they'll sit on a long perch, and you'll have mom on this side, dad on this side, and the babies in the middle. So they have like a little family unit thing going on, which is pretty cool.
That's awesome.
And then the babies, when they're fledged, they wing beg for food. So they'll come up to mom or dad, throw a wing over mom or dad, and like tap them on the shoulder. So they're like, "Hey, hey, I'm hungry. I'm hungry."
That's awesome.
So it's really they have really cool, distinct behavior. Yeah, and then they fledge fast and they make more doves. So pretty cool.
Nice.
Also, both of these birds, and we should wrap this one up soon, but both of these birds are visually sexable in almost all their color morphs. They both have like unlimited color morphs.
Yeah. Yeah.
But unless you have all white birds, button quail, the males have a necklace or like a, I think of it as a beard, really.
Yeah.
That's what
Bib.
I think of it as.
I think
The
I call it
bib
a
is what
white
they
bib.
call it.
Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, but it's a very distinct, like, just go look on either of
It's
our
like a
Instagrams, you'll
it's
see
like a
it. But
it's like a Santa Claus beard, just nice and white, and there's
right,
two distinct lines.
yeah, you can't miss it. And then male diamond doves, and the older they get, the more apparent this becomes. I'm shout out to my friend. Can't remember what her Instagram handle is. My friend Joanna, who I think will listen to this. Hey, I messed up one for her one time, but I can sex them pretty early on. So they have an eye ring, and the males get this like reddish orange eye ring that gets thicker and thicker till it almost looks like they have something wrong with them. And the females don't develop that ring, so they are visually sexable, which is really nice for breeding. And then, yeah, I mean, they're great birds. It's something else to add in that doesn't
Yeah.
require you don't have to do an additional kind of food. There's no big additional requirement. They play well with others. They also do better with aggressive birds,
Yeah.
aggressive finches. Like I have mine in with my weavers because they are bigger.
Yeah.
The only problem I've ever had with them is I stopped keeping two pairs together because, sort of like button quail, they are relentless breeders. The females will get the bald patch. And if you have two males, it causes, and I've seen this in other species of animals, like certain fish and things. If there's competition, it causes them to go nuts. So they'll just
Yeah.
both try to breed both females all day long every day, and the females can't eat, they don't eat, it's a problem. So
Yeah.
um, for that reason alone, I say one pair per cage, but not because they won't fight. They'll just be like, oh yeah, I'll get to her. Okay, well I'm gonna get, my girl, and they'll just both, and the female's like, guys, I really would like a nap.
That's
Um,
funny.
so that,
You,
yeah, that's the only thing.
you reminded me of an. We can wrap it up after this one with the button quill males. We kind of they're pushy. Let's be honest. Like they love their girls. But one thing I do love about the button quail and the males in particular, if they find any type of food, they will offer it up to their females. And so what they'll do is, if they catch an insect or they find like a new piece of food that they think is like high quality, they'll put it in their beak and they kind of turn their head to the side and then they make this little call, this little chirp call, and they hold it in their beak and it's basically calling to the female saying, "Hey, look, I got something for you," and then she comes and runs over and takes it out of his beak and he lets her eat it. So I think that's pretty cool. I'm sure he's probably thinking, "Hey, I just fed you. Now let's do some business after."
Right.
But
Yeah, we're trying to
um,
keep this family friendly, but there may be some old what do they call it? The oldest profession in the
yeah,
world going on.
yeah, and I think I actually showed that in my last button quote video that I posted on YouTube, but it's pretty cool. It's just some different unique traits that the males carry, through these different species, and it's part of their mating ritual. But I thought that was pretty cool. There's not very many other birds or quail out there that do that for the females that hold that piece of food for them. You got other birds that will like eat it and then regurgitate it and feed it to the females as part of their
Like just like,
affection. And
hey, I just caught this. You hungry? Check it
yeah,
out.
exactly. Yeah, it's like, hey, come on over here, baby. But
Well,
it's pretty cool.
another big benefit of button quail that I haven't mentioned yet, or we haven't mentioned yet, is they, I don't personally count them towards my bird load in an enclosure.
Yeah,
So your finches, your flying birds, they're going to say hi. Your button quail, every once in a while, and they can fly.
yeah,
They're not good flyers, but if they're frightened, they'll shoot up into the air. So if you have them in a low ceiling cage, they can injure themselves.
yeah,
But every once in a while, I'll walk in and I'll look up, and there'll be a button quail like up on one of the perches, and I'll just be like, "What are you doing
yeah,
up here?" But as a
yeah,
general rule, they stay on the ground, and so they don't really interact with the finches much, and the finches don't really interact with them, and so
yeah,
it's kind of like you have two worlds almost.
yep,
And so if you're looking for another bird that you could add in without, I mean, you're going to have to clean more because they do have bigger poop. But if you're
Right.
looking for a bird to add in that doesn't change what you feed, doesn't really change anything other than
Yep.
you have this cool other species and new behavior, both of these species are really awesome for that. They
For
get
sure.
along well, they eat the same stuff, and they're a great addition to the aviary. And I, like personally, I don't think I'd ever keep an aviary without both of these species. I really enjoy
Yeah.
both of them a lot, and I love them. Yeah, great birds all around.
Right there with you, man. Love them.
All right, so um, we already talked about it, but jump in the comments, give us a new suggestion,
Got
share the
got.
podcast.
If you guys want some merch, we've got a whole plethora of different types of bird brains merch that are available to you
Chris's
guys. And
wife doesn't want it. She wants you to have it.
yes, yes, she wants me to get rid of this stuff. So
She's doing
yeah.
enough laundry as it is. Chris has like 4 million kids. Um, so yeah, if you jump down there, get active. You know, even if you're thinking, oh, this is a dumb question, promise you it's not. I've
Yeah,
probably been
please do.
asked it before, or if you're wondering, somebody else is too. We want to spread the information, spread the love. Every once in a while, I get something that makes me have to go Google something. So I got a
Yeah,
question today actually about pied patterns on red throat parrot finches, and I had to go do some research and learn something. And believe it
interesting.
or not, we don't know everything about birds, and I love learning. Yeah, I'll fill you in on it. But so get in there, mix it up. If you're looking for us on socials, I am some variation of the Javiary. On I'm on Facebook, Instagram, Reddit, Threads. I'll take snail mail if you can figure out my address. But yeah, it's either the underscore Javiary or the Javiary. And Chris, where can they find you?
Yep, same. Bird Nerd for YouTube, Facebook, and then Bird Nerd 4 for Instagram. And since we're kind of highlighting the button quail species today, I do sell button quail hatching eggs on eBay. And same thing, I think it's Bird Nerd 9 because they're the
But you'd
other
sell them off of
variation.
Instagram too, or something if somebody DM'd you.
Absolutely. And people locally hit me up all the time. I actually just sold a bunch this last week of local people texting saying, "Hey, you got any hatching eggs?" I've got three trios of mature button quail that lay daily. So I've got quite a few eggs that I am selling. So if you guys are interested in that, look me up on Instagram. It's Bird Nerd. I think 9 is what it is. And I usually have something going on each week that you can bid on and get some eggs. So
And if you can't find Chris for whatever reason, and you can find me, I'll get you connected, or vice versa. So
right,
let us
likewise.
know. And if you're going to pitch button quail eggs, I'm going to have doves this year. So if you're
Yeah, there you go.
looking for diamond doves, I'm your guy, and I'll ship. And we're going to get Chris shipping here soon too. So all these birds we're
Yeah,
talking about, if you're like, man, I really wish I could get some of their birds, like, yes, we do that. So we're
yeah.
we're all about ethical breeding and spreading the hobby. I think that's it for this one. Appreciate y'all, and we'll catch you in the
Thanks,
next one.
guys. We'll see you.